Hi guys, Serop here. Welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to discuss and dive a little bit deeper on my experience selling AI solutions to small businesses. I received a lot of comments for you asking about a detailed explanation of what actually happens behind the scenes. So I made this video to tell you exactly what I tried to sell, how did the sales calls went, how did the conversation go, what stuff I had to deal with regarding regulations, and even like handing over the solutions to the clients. And finally, I want to end up with why do I think this is not such a big opportunity as much as all these AI gurus making it sound like. You probably found this channel because of my other video that I did where I said about AI influencers trying to inflate their results and maybe lying to us about what is exactly the opportunity out there selling AI solutions and AI agents just to try to sell their AI courses and content. And I received a lot of feedback from you, mostly positive. I would say 99% was positive, and most of you resonated with this idea. And you asked me to generate a more detailed explanation of what actually went and what actually happened. Why did I decide to stop selling these solutions? So about 3-4 months ago, I created what I thought was a AI solution that fits a very specific niche, which is the wedding venue industry here in Germany and in Spain. What I try to solve is the very common problem that is called time to lead. So basically, whenever somebody or a business receive a request, the quicker you are to respond to this request with a personalized offer, the more likely it is that you close these people. So on paper, this sounds like a very legit thing to build automation for. And right now, using N8N, this is possible to connect it to your email address or whatever form submitting template that you're using, maybe Tally or any other forms that you're using on your website. So the moment the inquiry comes in, the AI agent reads this inquiry, it has its custom knowledge base, and it can reply with a very customized proposal or customized offer to the client to their email address. So I thought this is brilliant. I built a small prototype, which is really interesting because nowadays you can build a prototype with much less time. So it doesn't require you days and months of development. Now you can build something within maybe a week using these N8N tools and workflows. And I think that's why people are really focusing on this kind of aspect is like, oh, build this in half an hour and sell it for 3,000. In my experience, it was, yes, you build this in half an hour, but then you're going to spend maybe 6 months to try to monetize it, to try to sell it, try to convince people to use it. And this is where the actual challenge lie, and the regulation, of course, where people are not really speaking about. So that was my idea. I thought of building this automation and try to maybe start with the wedding venue industry, but I also wanted to go to real estate. I'm sure you can see everywhere online, like, yeah, I want to automate real estate. I want to automate this and this and that. And I had maybe 5 different niches that I want to target. But the first one that I started was the wedding venue industry. And this is where the problems start. It started before I even started talking to people. The first thing that you need to do to start any business idea is to talk to clients, ideally even before building anything. That was like my experience so far is like I built something and then I tried to sell it. I saw also some of your comments. People are saying this is a typical developer mistake. I totally agree with you. When you get so excited about technology, you just want to build, you want to show people. And then the last thing you think about is actually, okay, how can I sell this actually to people? So I totally understand. Also, it feels a little bit better to try to sell to people once you have some sort of something to show, like a demo or an MVP. So I built this MVP, and the first thing I needed to do is to find wedding venues. I thought maybe start in Germany because I live here in Berlin. So I scraped some data. Usually for these kind of small businesses, the most reliable source is somehow Google Maps. And if you go to Apify, you can write what business you're looking for and then scrape as many URLs, as many phone numbers as you need, and then you can just start phone call them. I know I also saw some people were saying, hey, this is not legal to cold call people and offer them services. Which this is a disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, but from the research that I've done, because this topic was also on my mind, it scared the hell out of me that people can sue me for phone calling them and sending them a cold email. This is only the case if you're doing calls to private people. Definitely this is not allowed in Germany. I don't know about other places in Europe. But if you're phone calling businesses, it's technically also not allowed unless you are assuming legitimate business interest. This is assuming that they're going to sue you that, hey, you bombarded us with so many cold emails. But usually for one cold email or a phone call, you can just be nice on the phone and things don't really go that way. So don't really focus on like, oh, I'm going to go to jail. Otherwise, you don't start anything. Like you need to call these people somehow. But yeah, don't focus too much on this. It's kind of okay. But yeah, keep that in mind, especially people designing these email campaigns. If somebody tell you to unsubscribe, you need to stop sending them emails. So yeah, just be careful with that. There are some regulations, but as I said, I'm not a lawyer, so please look it up. So what I did, I scrapped all these URLs, and then I started contacting these wedding venues. Of course, I didn't start splashing some random emails, but at least for the first 10 to 50, I actually looked into their websites. I looked into how I can help them, generated them a very personal email if I can find their name or who's the owner of this wedding venue. And I told them this is exactly what I can do for you. And I offered the demo for free just for them to get to know me and just to see what I'm trying to offer. I did this for over 200 wedding venues. I started doing it in Germany and then also have a friend from El Salvador. So we started also targeting Spain because he can speak Spanish. And we sent around 400 emails. And from the 400 emails, one of them replied. I know it's not the results that you're looking for, but for me, this one person who replied, it was like, oh my God, I have a proof of concept. I am in business, like this guy is interested. He want to build it for his business. So we jumped on a discovery call and I talked to him about what we're planning to do and talked to him about the product. And he was like, yeah, I think this would be really helpful for me. I'm always on the field. I would love for AI to respond to people or at least just generate me a draft and then I can approve it and just send it. That would already save me so much time. And I was like, okay, then we're good to go. Showed him a demo, how it's going to work with N8N. And this is where the problem started happening. I was ready to deliver the product. And then I noticed, okay, so the first thing I need to do, I need to get you an API key for OpenAI, right? And then I started looking in OpenAI. And if you're selling to German businesses, is not a very good practice to send your data outside of Europe. Here, we're not talking about medical data, not so sensitive data. It's still personal data. So you cannot really send it to other tools that have their servers running outside of the AU zone. Sorry for making this video about AU, but this was my experience here. And I think also not a lot of people talking about Europe in general. So I'm just going to mention my experience here. So that was the first bottleneck. I wasn't able to use ChatGPT or OpenAI keys. So I had to find like another way. Some people tell you can host it locally. You can use local LLMs. That's absolutely fine. But then they are not so powerful. You also need to put them on GPUs. And especially if you're selling to businesses with limited budget, everything that has such a high technical requirement becomes just out of the picture. And also, if you don't want to manage this yourself, it becomes also very difficult to do as well. So for me, I just wanted something quick and easy just to make a sale and then build my testimonials and from there start charging more and maybe some retainer. So the first challenge was, I couldn't get the OpenAI key. I looked around. What is the way around this? This is actually, nobody talks about this. So you don't have to go to local LLMs. You can actually use Azure, which is Microsoft's kind of cloud provider. And you can call OpenAI that is hosted in Europe. So you can host a node on Azure in Europe, and then you can call that. So the data stays in Europe. Everything is processed within Europe. And you can do basically what you needed to do with OpenAI. This is something that I think nobody online is talking about, but at least the professionals who work with OpenAI and work with machine learning and data science, they all know this. But at least for the AAA community, AI automation, nobody's mentioning this. So that would be a workaround. Now, the challenging part is how can I give this to my client? If you host it yourself, like you do the whole management for your client, and again, my understanding maybe wasn't 100% sure because there were so many papers, there were so many legal stuff and compliances that it was very difficult for me to understand, okay, now I found a solution, how I can give that to my client. Can I provide him a key from this Azure deployments that I have? And it turned out you can, but then you enter another requirement loophole where you become like a data processor. And that's not something you want to do, especially if you're like a consultant who are coming in, building a solution, and you just want to leave, especially if you're starting your business, because it requires you to make like a contract with them about data processing agreement. And it just become too much of a headache for such a small business that you're doing also for free for the first couple of things. So I was like, okay, we need to find another way around this. This is annoying. I noticed there are ways with Azure that you can help people manage their servers without you being the actual person processing the data. But it was definitely a headache. And I was like, okay, this is not the way to go, especially for this small client. The second bottleneck or the second like hurdle that I hit with was their budget and their expectation to spend on AI. I told the guy, like, the first thing we're going to do is absolutely for free, so don't worry about it. I remember when I mentioned about the fees for N8N, it was already like, oh yeah, we have to pay 25. I just need to know also what other the expenses, because we're limited on budget and we need to know like exactly what we're spending on. And it was like a discussion over like something that is around $100 or €100 a month. I just remember the conversation was just very uncomfortable. Like I had to be very sparse and very careful with the money regarding them, because they're very limited on budget. And I don't think this is just a use thing from this particular guy. I also worked with a lot of early stage founders, people who are bootstrapping to build their AI solutions or MVPs or whatever. And it's always the same problem and pattern reoccurring. Like people with limited budget are always going to be the most annoying clients. And I'm really sorry to say this, but they are also the ones that are micromanaging, the one that expect so many things without even paying you. It gets really, really frustrating with these people. And then at some point you realize like, okay, now you've done so much work extra that your hourly rate dropped so much that it doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, that was my experience with people and businesses with limited budget. It's just very frustrating because they tend to micromanage. They tend to disagree over price. You tend to do way over hours for way less hourly rate. So I wouldn't recommend it. So that was like the second bottleneck that I had with these small businesses. The third one was actually finding their contact details. So I told you I was able to scrape around 500 wedding venues in Germany and Spain. But then from them, you expect like a small number of these wedding venues or these small businesses to reply to your cold email, because nobody knows you, right? Like you're just starting out fresh. You have no connections. Maybe like me, maybe you do have connections. I don't know. But when I started, I knew nobody, especially in the wedding venue industry. And then you expect such a small number of people to reply to you, especially over email. So I started cold calling people and businesses just so I can maybe at least let them hear my pitch. And of course, if you're not so familiar with cold calling and stuff, it's a skill you can build. And first of all, you need to build this courage to cold call others and try to offer them a service. So that was already like a learning for me to overcome this fear. I remember one client called me back and I was so terrified to pick up the phone that I just hang up on him. I didn't answer. And then I went to the bathroom, I looked in the mirror and I was like, a client is calling you, just pick up the phone. And then I picked up the phone again and managed to like make a sale or whatever. But yeah, it's terrifying, especially if you're a developer and don't really encounter these sales. I know there are amazing salespeople out there, but especially if you're like a one-person agency starting out, you need to do everything. You need to do the deployment, you need to do the sales, the marketing, everything. That's all your responsibility. And what I noticed finding these wedding venues was always a challenge. I was able to find 500, but then from these 500, maybe 10 people replied, and one of them said, yes, they are interested to close this. So you needed like somehow to scale this way more, because I noticed with cold calling and cold outreach, it's all about numbers. People tell you invest time in personalization, and I agree. But at some point, yeah, you're going to get ghosted like most of the time. So you just need to send a lot of emails and you hope that some of them are currently experiencing the exact pain point that you're trying to solve, and then they would hire you or be at least entertaining your pitch, that they would listen to you. So my problem was I couldn't have a database that had so many of these businesses that I can just blast a bunch of campaigns on them and try to do the numbers game. So that was a limitation compared to if you go to mid-sized businesses that are marketing agencies or other kind of businesses that there are databases that has at least maybe 20, 30, 50,000 possible decision makers that you can target and send emails to. It makes things way easier because you have much easier access to this bigger database. And then you can play this big numbers game. Hopefully it works. So that was like a very limiting factor. At some point, I reached a bottleneck where I scraped everything on Google Maps. I scraped everything on the internet, and I started looking for special blogs, videographer blogs, where people are posting different wedding venue location that they like. And I started scraping also these kind of stuff to find more wedding venues that I can send messages to. So that was a limit in getting more clients. And now let's go back to this actual client that said, yes, he's interested. And I had to find him like the OpenAI and do the hosting in Azure. Another limitation that I saw that took so much of my time and to install these solutions for them was actually exchanging the N8N workflow. I know people tell you just like, oh, just copy this and paste it. And technically, yes, this is true. But setting up the N8N, like let's say the client buys their own N8N account and they share with you the credentials and then you can enter there. setting up every credential for, let's say, for Gmail, for Google Drive. Some of you might have set up for yourself, like it takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes, but they're not going to share with you all this information. So what I ended up doing is I sat with him on a video call, and then we had to go through the process together of how he needs to connect Gmail, Google Calendar, all this kind of stuff that the workflow required to do it himself. And I'm just sitting there telling him, yeah, go there, do this, do that. And it was just so frustrating. It took like so many hours to end up doing. I mean, it did work out, but I cannot see myself or even like somebody who works with me doing this process for hundreds of people, because you need to scale. If you're charging them like not so much money because they're small businesses, you need to get so many of these businesses to get like a decent amount of money. But they're also not willing to pay for these retainers, crazy retainers that I keep hearing, like, yeah, 1,000, 2,000 retainer just to retain us. It's too expensive. I remember I tried to sell a appointment maker, like as a chatbot for a hairdresser, because I was impressed that he used some technology to do like these appointments, and he was fairly young, and he and his dad was owning the business. And I was like, hey, have you ever thought about a chatbot? And he was like, yeah, I keep seeing these YouTube videos. I'd be interested. How much does it cost? And I was like, yeah, just for the AI, it could be like 50, like could be less, I don't know, like depend on the traffic. For the N10 and hosting and the AI, it costs you around 50. And he was like, oh, I would never buy that. Like, I'm using a free solution, free appointment maker solution that you can just click some buttons and that solves my problem. Why would I need the AI and the chatbot? So yeah, sometimes the perspective is a little bit different. So depends also on the budget and how people perceive. Some people don't need an AI. Sometimes a button solves their problem. Why do you need a fancy chatbot to answer your, or like a AI receptionist? Sometimes people don't care. After we finished the integration, there was a challenge, was like, okay, how do we keep this ongoing? Like, if something happened, so I had to like create a lot of workflows. Like if something fails, then I will be notified and I will be on like an on-call channel to answer these, try to come in and solve whenever something happens. And to be honest, after we went through this whole process, I told him like, hey, I'm really sorry. This is not really working out. It's taken so much time, and I see what's going to happen in the future is going to be a lot of headache for both of us. If you're a consultant trying to build something like an agency and leave, then at least you need to give it and do like a handover for somebody who can at least manage it, or charge some sort of like this retainer to like solve everything that ever happens to it. But then you need to deal with all legal stuff. Funny enough, also for controlling the AI output, of course, you put like an AI agent and you need to log the answers that it's giving. And you need to monitor like how many times did this business owner accept the suggestion, or how many times did the owner reject the suggestions. So this data I was logging. So I put the input email, I put the output text, and I put whether this email was accepted or rejected. This would help me to understand like, okay, is the AI actually helping this business, or are all the suggestions being rejected? So for him to send me this data, because it included also sometimes the emails, names of people, that was like also a GDPR problem. Like they cannot just send me this data. They need to notify these people that they track this data. They needed to tell them like, hey, we are sending this. I need to sign a contract with him that I am able to process this data. So what I end up doing is like you do some data de-anonymization. So you remove all the names, you remove whenever you log something. Let's say you just want to log the input and output. You need to just strip basically the email from everything that you can identify a person with, like address. There's like a long list of what makes personal data. It's not just like an email and phone number. There's like the IP address. There's maybe the street. I don't know. Like you need to really make sure that the data is clean if they send it to you for processing and for improvement. The final part that also was a little bit barrier was whenever this email, technically, if this email was going to implement my solution, they need to be upfront with their privacy. Like if you go to the privacy term there on each website, you can see it. You can read what is happening on this website. So technically, if you have like Google Analytics, it tells you like, yeah, I am tracking your IP, because you see like these cookies, like banner, like you say reject or accept. These basically just for analytics to know like how are you using my website, where are you coming from. It's not technically, we don't know your name, we don't know who you are, but it helps the business. Like for example, for my website, it helps me identify which pages are the people finding, like which part of the SEO is working. So this is important for businesses. And if you reject it, you don't share your data with Google Analytics. But technically everything that happens on your website, especially if somebody sends you an inquiry through like this inquiry box, you can also see it in Calendly. Like sometimes whenever you book an appointment, because you put your name and your email address, you have to accept their terms and conditions to say like, hey, I am accepting that I'm putting my name there. So if you're using AI to process like some things, you need to also add, hey, we're going to be using N8N to have a workflow that would automatize the way we draft a proposal, and you should be okay with that by submitting an inquiry with your name to us. So usually you put it down like as a checkbox. It's like, by submitting this inquiry, you are agreeing to our terms and services. I'm sure you've read this sentence all the time. This is what exactly it means. It means like, we're going to process your data this way. And if you're going to send the data to an agency like myself, you need to be upfront by it. Like, hey, we're going to be sending maybe your data. We're going to remove, if you're sending personal data. If you're just sending random stuff, it's fine. It's only the personal data that matters to GDPR. So they had to do like this change and this change and this change. And at the end, we're like, okay, it's not really worth it. It's not because I was doing it for free, but it's just not worth the time for the small retainer that I was offering for doing something that is just maybe like a one-time sale. Ideally, you want to find a client that has so many problems that you can always upsell them on very different things. Like right now, luckily, because of the video, a lot of people and mid-sized businesses reach out because they want to work with me. And these businesses have like, I just sat down and they just dumped all their problems on me. Like I was like, okay, let's start with the first one. Let's start with this one. Let's see how we can do this. And usually you can see, I'm also going to make another video about how to use AI efficiently for mid-sized businesses, because their problems, some of them don't even require AI at all. It's just they need some help with automation. They need some help with digitalization. They are still sending some things back and forward, some files back and forward that could be improved and become more efficient to reduce human error. So sometimes this is the magic. You don't need these AI agents. Please don't do like multi-agent system and all this kind of stuff from the first time you ever encounter AI. Start small, learn how to build it effectively, how to solve small problems, and then you can start building trust, like you as a developer, that you can build a little bit more complicated systems and then just grow from there. I hope you like this video. Sorry if it's hard when I talk to the camera so freely. It's hard to maybe make my thoughts so clear. If you want me to be a little bit more clear, like as in my presentation, I can maybe prepare presentations in the future and then we can go through it one by one. I do like this free speak because I can share with you my experience just from the top of my thoughts. So I think you can also relate to that. I heard that some people like it and come across as authentic, but yeah, the danger is like I go in tangents sometimes. So I'm sorry about that. So thank you so much for listening to this video. If this was your first time, I would appreciate a like or a comment. Let me know how was your experience selling similar solutions to our other small businesses. I would appreciate if you subscribe so you can always be notified whenever I upload a new video, and I hope to see you in the next one.